Welcome to the Value Builder Podcast, where we focus on real estate with a value-add mindset. Real strategies, real operators, real outcomes. Let's dive in.
All right. Welcome to the show, everyone, to Value Builder Show. Today, I'm very excited. I have here Matthew Drane, a founder of Revolt CRE. Matt spent 13 years training and developing hundreds of commercial real estate professionals at major firms like Marcus Millichap, Gray Steel. He is a broker and a principal in deals. He is someone who is doing the work and training. And what's very fascinating, that's not only he transacted over $500 million in transactions, but he led teams and trained teams who did billions of dollars. And what's really interesting that I've heard he said that his mission to break down the private club mentality in commercial real estate. So what you'll learn today, guys, you'll learn today how to break into real estate without commercial real estate without Ivy League degree or established network. You're going to learn tactics of direct-to-seller prospecting and getting deals done, and building sustainable businesses all the way to brokerage businesses. Plus, we're going to talk about why Matt believes the traditional brokerage model is broken and what's next. So welcome to the show, Matt. I am really excited to have you here. So I think let's start with, you've said commercial real estate has been a private club reserved only for the specific network or Ivy League degree and established person who is coming in on the second base. Can you unpack that?
Sure. Well, Saul, first off, thank you so much for having me. It's always great to speak with a fellow salesperson, a fellow, prospecting madman like myself. We could probably trade war stories all day about just the art of the deal, and I love it. So, I'll unpack that. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, commercial real estate is one of those industries where you almost have to know someone who's already in the business, especially when you start thinking about the bigger companies, to even get your foot in the door. And I'm thankful for my opportunity. The hiring manager at a large firm took a chance on me. I'm well educated, but I didn't go to the Ivy League schools, wasn't cum laude or the best student when I was in undergrad and eventually business school. So I wasn't at the top of my class. I didn't come from wealth. I didn't have family relationships that owned a portfolio or a family office. So I was grateful to have just the chance to get into the door.
Yeah.
And I believe that this business truly is a meritocracy. If you can do the work, if you put in the effort, you can build a name and build a space for yourself in the business. But it's still very much a gate-kept industry that you have to get into before you can earn that merit and that seat at the table. So that's my goal, is to break down the barrier on just access. And I do that through just sharing the fundamentals of the business with anyone that wants to learn. So regardless of what jersey you wear or what company you work for, if you want to learn how to get in front of apartment owners, underwrite apartment deals, build a brokerage business, trading what I call private capital, maybe 20 to 200 unit multifamily deals, 2 to 10 million, then I have a path in the system of helping people do that. And that's what I love.
There you go. So that first guy who gave you a chance, do you want to give him a shout out? And who was he? And was he a mentor at the end?
Yeah, sure. Bryn Mary. So Bryn Mary, he was my former, at one point in time, hiring manager. He hired me in 2012. This was at Marcus and Millichap. And over the years, I actually kind of worked under Bryn and started to work alongside Bryn as a market leader. So I owe a lot to Bryn for opening the door. And he also gave me that path to leadership, which ultimately led to, me running 3 offices for that business and 120 producers that did on average $1 billion a year in sales. So had it not been for that interview, that first opportunity, and of course, that company, I wouldn't be here today. So absolutely. Shout out to him and to that company.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I have a maybe similar story, but I started Century 21 selling houses, and my broker was Dan Gudmundsson. And the lesson I got was the first lesson. It was at the desk, is like, hey, Saul, this business is pretty much very easy. He pointed at the phone and he's like, look, the one who's going to make the most phone calls wins. That's it. And I took it really, very seriously. And the rest is history, and I just
No.
those few lessons. Now I won't forget about it. It seems like small, but actually has such a big change in trajectory of your life eventually.
It's math. I don't care your skill set. I don't care how good or how bad you are. If you pick up that black box on the desk 250 times a
Yeah.
week, you'll have 25 conversations at least. And
Yes.
even if you're terrible, you don't know how to ask open-ended questions, you don't know how to follow a conversation, you don't know where to go, somebody will still give you a shot and you'll meet with at least 5 people. If you do that
Exactly.
consistently for 12 months, it's hard not to find your way into a deal, you
That's
know?
awesome. Yeah. Amazing. All right. So let's keep diving in. So let's talk about Revolt CRE. I know a little bit about it, but I would like more. And I know you said it's a democratizing training, sales training.
Sales training.
So what actually skills you teaching them, and maybe also can unpack that. How does it work, and where it came from, and what are you doing with it?
Absolutely. So after training about 700 and working with 700 sales professionals in commercial real estate, I noticed a few themes. The ones that were specialized did pretty well. The ones that had proper training and who had a proper mentor who actually cared about their business. Those three things, training, business plan, mentorship, if they had those three things, they had a much higher chance of success than those who were generalists, tried to figure out on their own, or just watching YouTube University. So Revolt CRE is my solution to what I wish was available when I started, which is a formula, a system, and a process of taking someone from A to Z on the sales process of building a investment sales brokerage business. So everything from the front end business planning, identifying what market might have opportunity, sizing your market, stock and velocity, thinking about, okay, I now have all the properties and the owners. How do I enter into the sales cycle? Well, giving a very strategic approach to entering into the sales cycle, but most importantly, someone like myself, my peers, some of the other members in the community who truly care about that person's growth, who's willing to answer questions, who's willing to role play, who's willing to help solve those challenges and help them overcome obstacles as they go through the first 2 years of their business. That's what Revolt CRE was founded for. And we are broker agnostic. So you can get some training and support if you work at a certain company or if you're on a certain team. This is available to anyone who wants to grow and improve their skills. And as of late, we've had a great level of success with helping those small to mid-sized brokerage companies who don't have the budget for a full-time sales manager kind of take the burden of some of that training and responsibility off of their plate and be a solution to help train and grow their sales force. So that's who we are, and that's part of what I love and what I'm passionate about.
So just if to understand a little bit that training, so it's not only prospecting to sellers. The one I'm hearing is databasing, building the list, skip tracing, building the buyer's list, all that together, or mostly is geared towards actually building that fundamental skill of building the habit of prospecting, objection handlers, all that woo stuff that comes in, right? Before I understand it.
It's A to Z. So of course, for someone that might have zero pipeline, zero business, let's set a foundation. Let's get you a CRM. Let's identify a market. Let's give you a plan of attack. Then, of course, you start calling. Well, you need accountability because you now have the plan, but if you don't execute the plan on a regular basis, if you don't have a feedback loop to help you improve those talk tracks and conversations, most people stall out and eventually give up. So it's the community aspect that keeps someone engaged while they are launching their business. And then for some organizations, I'm like a fractional, if you will, sales leader. I will help guide them on strategy. I'll help them with team architecture. They have 10 advisors. They want to grow and deploy into another market. I'll help them from an enterprise or a corporate level execute a plan and deploy into another market, and then help that executive lead that team. Everything from partnership dissolution and disputes to, fee structures to just about every problem in this business. After running, a few offices for a large company, there's not much I haven't seen, from the recruitment side, the talent retention side, to the attrition side, to the expansion and verticals, including debt as a service line. I've done it all. So I'm lending those 13 years of experience to individuals as well as companies that are in a place where they probably can't afford someone like me full time, but they leverage my expertise through the community.
Makes sense. Now, the question actually, I think from my field, many of the listeners, as I mentioned to you, are operators, principals of the buildings, portfolios. Do you have any clients you teach, not brokers, but operators who are going direct to seller route? Do you have any of those?
I have a client out of Texas that we've worked with. They built an acquisitions arm. And if you think about it, and this is a self-sabotage, right? Because as a broker, I want to control all the deal flow. I want to
Yeah,
control a relationship and be the sole point of deal sourcing for a principal. Well, most principals, once they get to a certain point, they realize, yes, they still rely on brokers for deal flow, but they're also going direct to sellers. And it's not in the seller's best interest to go direct to a principal because that is the scenario that a principal wants. They want to get into a place of one-on-one negotiation in a vacuum. But
exactly.
for some sellers, they don't care about competition. They don't care about getting the highest price and the best terms and making sure they run a full process. They have a number in mind for their deal. If a principal calls them direct and they want to do a deal, they'll do that deal. So through Revolt, I've also trained and I currently teach some principal organizations how to stand up direct to seller systems because the process is very similar. It's just the language varies slightly. And I would actually
Mhm.
argue that a principal calling an owner directly
Stronger.
has a much higher chance of getting that owner to engage than a broker who has the wrong or a bad approach.
Okay.
Because most brokers are purely transactional. Most brokers are calling, trying to buy, sell, and have a transactional conversation versus a long-term rapport building relationship.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I win because I've always set my business up to be a long-term venture, not I call you today, I expect a listing next week.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works. So because most brokers are so transactional, they've actually trained principals to avoid and to run from those phone calls because they see a broker coming a mile away. They smell the broker breath. They smell the fee, the fee pursuit, and they're turned off by it. And that's why a lot of principals have had so much success approaching sellers directly, but from a different approach than most brokers. So I can train both. I, of course, get paid one way. I get paid when I sell apartment deals and
Mm-hmm.
usually represent a seller in that transaction. But through my community, I'm training and teaching others how to also find success in going direct to owners.
Well, if I may, I want to ask also a tactical question again, in a little bit in my field, and many operators maybe experience that, who are going direct to seller out, right? So we are going right now very active after small bay industrial. That's very hot space. My background, I was for years direct to seller type of acquisitions person, where in the brokerage side or on the principal side. But broker community, broker relationship are very, very important to me. So, question is, what is the kind of best approach not to rub brokers the wrong way? There are some brokers who are like you. They totally get it, They totally get it. A lot of times I can have the better report. I have better chance making this deal happen. And I'll use the same broker in this position, but there are many who are very, very territorial, right? And
Yeah, sure.
and from my perspective is I'm not really trying to save a fee. I'm really trying to
Right.
make a deal, you know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
make everyone happy, but how to approach, especially when we're going in a new market, when you want to have a brokers. I'm not doing this to cut out for the purpose of cutting out the fee. I'm just making it for the purpose of getting the deal done.
Yeah.
Because,
Because, that's a great,
I can be blunt here. For the most
no,
part, we're much better on prospecting, on tenacity than most. There's not too many brokers like you, right? There's few,
no. There's no
but
offense
for the
taken
most
here.
part, I can out prospect like 95%,
There's no offense
But so
taken.
coming back to, so how do I approach this? Do I still pay some of the fee? And if I did a deal in acquisition, I'm really kind of lost on this, how to structure all this, this setup.
I love that question. And here's how I'll answer it because there's no hard feelings. It's business, right?
Yeah.
Because think about it this way. If you have to come through me to buy that deal and I control that listing, you're going to pay a lot more because I'm going to create a very competitive marketplace. I'm going to run a process. I'm going to expose that asset to a lot more prospective buyers. I'm going to force you to be more aggressive in your underwriting. You're going to pay more if you get that deal as a listed opportunity versus direct from the seller. So as a broker, first and foremost, I have to acknowledge and appreciate that you're going to have to do what's best for you as a principal. And I can't argue with that. Just like the seller, in most cases, if their goal is to get the highest price, they're going to do what's best for them, which is usually list that property exclusively with a really, really good broker like myself. So as long as everyone can be an adult and understand there's nothing personal, everybody is trying to get the best deal for them. And in some cases, have a mutual win-win scenario, we'll start there, right? But here's what I believe. If I'm really a great broker and I have mastery over that market, Saul, if you go tie up a deal without my help, but we have a relationship and we've done deals before and we have that level of rapport, I want to be that broker that's so knowledgeable that you're coming to me and saying, hey, Matt, I got this deal. I'm thinking about buying it. Here's what I see. Here's how we underwrote it. What do you see? I would love to still, even if I don't get paid on that deal, on the acquisition, add value to you, because chances are I probably had a conversation with that owner. I probably told that owner what I thought that deal was worth. I don't have any hard feelings if that owner decided to go direct to you without involving me. That's business. It's okay. But I still want to be such a master of my trade and my craft that even if I don't earn a fee on that deal, I can somehow add value to you in that acquisition. And what I would hope for at some point on the back end, because you're a savvy owner that wants to maximize proceeds when you sell and maximize, returns for your investors, you're probably going to come to someone like me and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you see here? So I want to earn my fee on the back end, even if I didn't earn it on the front, because I still, throughout that ownership process, created value and was accretive to your ownership period. And that's how I do a lot of the deals with people that are finding deals directly, because I don't get paid on every deal. And I think it's been harder because fewer deals actually make sense. And that bid-ask spread between what a seller wants, they might want pricing that made sense 24 months. They might still want that price today. So there's a clamoring and a scarcity mentality, because if there used to be 150 deals trading per year in a given market, maybe there's 75 this year, right? So like, people are definitely getting more territorial. But if you're in this business like I am for a long-term relationship, I'm not trying to get paid on every deal. I'm trying to get paid over the life of a relationship. And that's how I value, my position in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a saying in our group that the first deal, or any other deal, is only down payment for the next one.
That's it.
That's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. And the brokers who get really, really pissed off about not getting, now the only time I will get pissed off is, of course, if I bring you a deal and I get cut out, right? Like, and I think everyone understands, like, that's just not good business. But if I wasn't involved, if there was a direct to seller, conversation, I would just want to be of value to where when the time comes down the road, I'm in position. So I would love to still be the first call, even if I don't get paid, because now I know, hey, how can I help Saul and his partners on this deal make money? And then how can I, during the ownership period, which most brokers forget about this.
Exactly.
There's only really 2, maybe 3, if you add in a refinance or a recapitalization. There's only 3 times throughout a life cycle of a deal where the ownership group is truly in position or thinking about selling or a capital event, right? The other 99% of the time, they're thinking about what? They're thinking about operations, reducing operating expenses. They're thinking about,
leasing,
tax liability and exposure strategies. They're thinking about top line revenue growth, other income opportunities. They're thinking about all the other things around operating that building. That's why, for me and our community, we train so much around you cannot be a transactional broker. You have to find ways of adding value in that in-between time. Yeah. Because if I can make you money while you own the asset, I'm at the top of the list when it comes down to who's going to help me sell this asset. So I focus my time on how do I maximize efficiencies for operators in that hold period.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And I'll probably share a tip, maybe for community and for you. The way I approach, let's say if the seller that we're just building a relationship, a lot of times will be from the cold list. A lot of times I will check with a broker who is maybe in that community and he's holding that relationships maybe for 10 years. And I'll just gauge, does he have a better relationship than me or no?
Yeah.
And if it's even if I approach the opportunity, you still need to close it, right? You need to still close it. So if I know if the broker has 10-year relationship and they just came in out of nowhere 2 weeks ago, even though I can probably do the deal, I'm probably going to still hire the broker for me to put it together. But that's how I view it.
I have a deal right now. It's about a 42 unit deal in Central Ohio. Seller wants around $4 million. The neighbor owns 200 or 300 adjacent neighboring units. The likely buyer who will pay the most amount of money is the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to list that deal, I said I was going to list it for this is a deal where we have other portfolio opportunities. So it's a gross fee of $125,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I were to list that deal in like create a market, he came to me and said, hey, look, I need someone to help me negotiate. This guy knows he has me by by the pair because it's just him and I. This deal's not on the market. And I'm like, yeah, I can guarantee you, and I probably would wager a body part that he's going to tie you up. And then at some point, when you get pregnant with the deal and start counting the money
Just
right
go
before
down.
closing, he's going to retrade you. And yeah, you're going to end up coming up short. So he's like, yeah, I need a buffer. I need someone to help me negotiate on my behalf. So we agreed, if I sell this deal to someone else, I get paid the $125,000 gross fee. If it ends up going to this one dude who's already at the table, he'll pay me $40,000. Guess what? I
Yeah.
still am probably going to save him more than $40,000 in overall proceeds. So that's the type of relationship to where it's like, look, I'm not going to get upset about not being the only person involved. I want to do what's right for the client and I want to add value. And sometimes a broker's value is just being a buffer for negotiation in between two parties.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's running a full marketing process and getting 7 written offers. But either way, a good broker knows how to play their role and not overextend their role. Because some brokers will blow a deal up out of ego because they didn't control the entire process. And that's okay if you're fee driven. I want to make sure that I don't blow up the relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to ask you about the fee structure. If you're not, if you don't want to share here, I'm giving you a pass. That's fine. But if you can define, let's say, how does it look like for your training in terms of, 5 junior acquisition managers or brokers you training on a regular basis? How does it look like for the small firm?
For the small firm, so there's an individual access to our community. Right now, we are running a promotional rate. It's $222 for an individual. So if someone wants to learn A to Z, it is 3 months of community access for $222. And they have a full step-by-step guide on how to go from sizing a market to a business plan to role play, first appointment, underwriting of assets, all the way down to continuity and growing rapport in your marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
$200. If a company who has, say, 4 individuals,
Mm-hmm.
they want that same access for each one of their individual advisors, as well as some customized one-on-one consulting and training that is bespoke to their organization. They can have access for 4 people plus some consulting hours for somewhere around $1,500 a month. So from a price point, I really believe that we've hit that fractional sales manager, sales training window, just because I know what I was making as a sales manager with less experience. That's a 6-figure, mid 6-figure fixed expense for a brokerage company. And
100%.
most firms with lower transaction volume, higher expenses, most companies who have 5 to 50 salespeople, they can't necessarily afford someone like me full time. But we've priced our model to be very competitive and very compelling because, where else can you train someone that will bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue and only invest a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s in their training?
100%. I agree. And then, so let's say those 4 or 5 people on weekly basis will be role playing. How does it look like in terms of prospecting role playing? How would you keep them account? What they getting in that?
Yeah. So we have community wide. We have several standing meetings every single month. We have Deal or No Deal. Deal or No Deal is a platform where they bring bring that rent roll, bring that T12, bring that seller provided financials to the meeting. And in real time, we have proprietary underwriting models that are specific to our community. We will underwrite those deals in real time. We'll size them to current present day yield expectations. We'll talk through all the things why this is a constraint and what's constraining price on this deal might be debt coverage ratio needs to pencil here. Can't have an equity multiple that's lower than, a 1.5 over this period of hold. Levered IRR, we're constrained by having to size this to an 18% or greater levered IRR. We'll talk through the real market data and help someone understand why we price the way we price.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one standing opportunity per month. We also have Practice Your Pitch. So Practice Your Pitch is geared on the three most common conversations that every broker has. The cold call. So we talk through the 5 steps of a cold call, the first appointment, the first in-person meeting, and then the actual pitch where you're asking for the business. So we role play those 3 scenarios, again, as a community every single week and throughout the month. And then for those custom client engagements, we have individual and private sessions that are exclusive to only that client based on the scope and the scale of that engagement. But anyone that's a part of the community has access to Deal or No Deal, Practice Your Pitch, and various other training sessions. We did a session last month on commercial real estate and artificial intelligence. We often will do special sessions on the federal government shutdown. What are the implications and how do you leverage real-time news into conversations with owners that will then get you in front of them and open the door? So we are a real-time community. I am still practicing brokerage. So I'm not someone who did this 20 years ago and I'm running from a dated playbook. I'm showing and sharing in real time what I'm doing to win business, what I'm doing to earn fees, and I'm sharing that as a benefit to my community.
That makes sense. Amazing. Great. Now, next topic, I would like to dive in. You mentioned about industry is shifting or models are broken, need to evolve. And you've worked in major firms and you have a sense that the model is being changed or it's not effective anymore. So can you share a crystal ball, where we're at, where we're going to be, and what's going to be working?
I currently also serve as a chief revenue officer and a senior managing director at Verdi Commercial Real Estate. We are a startup that's based in Columbus, Ohio. We've only been around for about 9 months, and we've been on an amazing journey. We've closed 24 apartment deals in 9 months.
Nice. Congrats.
As a startup, we are innovative in terms of just revolutionizing the way that brokerage operations really run. One thing that we've done that's unique is the direct-to-seller system. We have 2 verticals within our business. We have traditional brokerage and advisory. So I am a advisor. I have a license. I'm calling owners. I'm building a traditional model just like I would at some of the big 4, brokerage firms, CRE, you name it, Berkadia. But we also, because they were a principal shop originally, they bought apartment deals. They refined and mastered a direct-to-seller approach to going and finding and sourcing opportunities. We have a direct-to-seller system that is beneficial to our advisors because every week, in addition to my own efforts, I get a deal or 2 that hits my desk, fully underwritten, a proper evaluation that was sourced by someone other than myself. So I'm running my own traditional business, but I have a direct-to-seller team that's going to market on my behalf and sourcing opportunities in my market that I didn't do myself. So that's one way that we're kind of disrupting the industry is it doesn't have to be the same approach to brokerage. And the way that we offer that benefit is because the company is providing that talent that's going out to sourcing these opportunities, the company has a more favorable split than if I were to go source it myself. So we're doing things like that is, as a broker, it's only accretive to my business to have someone else who's calling in my market and putting deals on my desk. That's a win for me. I don't care who you are. If I can find an extra deal or 2 per week that I didn't source, I would gladly pay a higher split to the company by providing that service. That's one way that we're disrupting the industry. Another way is simply, look, most brokers I know, they want to get into the business because they also want to be principals. And I learned this the hard way, which is it's really hard to be a great broker and be a great principal. I did deals that I shouldn't have done. Some deals worked out, some deals did not. But I did learn a lesson, and I learned this lesson through cold calling. I was cold calling through the market, calling owners of 20 to 100 unit deals in Columbus. And I came across my current business partner who owned, a couple thousand units in Ohio at that time. And while they didn't have anything for me to sell as a broker, as I go about my business, I find opportunities. I found a deal that made sense. And I called up that owner. I said, look, I found this deal. At the time, I was part of a very innovative program in Columbus where they were training people like myself, emerging developers, on the art of development. And that program came with some incentives. One of the incentives was extremely affordable and cheap debt. So this was about 3 years ago. I was able to buy a 40-unit building for about $3 million with 2.5 fixed rate, 30-year AM debt with years of IO. So I called up that person who didn't have anything for me to sell, but ended up being a partner with that person. So I solved my own itch for ownership, but I learned that the right way to do principal activity as a broker is to be partners with clients that ultimately will be long-term clients that you do deals with and rep over time. So we're now exiting that deal, but that's what I learned in terms of what is missing in the industry is actually giving a path to ownership for brokers, not, a constraint and restricting that activity, because everyone wants the same thing. Most of the big firms, and I get it, the bigger you are, the more liability you have around fiduciary and getting sued. But the smaller firms who are nimble are able to offer a path to being a principal for brokers. And that's been really attractive, and that's disrupting the industry as well.
Yeah, 100%. No, absolutely. I agree that ultimately you have to go on the highest food chain. The highest food chain is actually being a buyer.
Yeah, that's right.
Not
That's
a
right.
seller, being a buyer. When you're a buyer, you are at the highest food chain of entire real estate. That's in my opinion. And being a buyer doesn't have to have all the cash. You have to be the most resourceful person.
Controlling the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. You
Exactly.
have to control the deal. And then the great people who control deals, who can also assemble the right team, those are the puppet masters. People think that the brokers are the puppet masters. Well, sometimes if they control the inventory, they are, but the person that truly is in control is the lender and also the people that control the opportunity and control the deal. So yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, so I think, just to clarify, well, I think the key advantage of your firm, which I totally agree, is that you have two pillars. You have a brokerage and you have in-house buyer, right? And
Well, yeah, we have an in-house buyer, but they're two separate entities.
Yes.
So they're two separate companies, but there's an opportunity to participate as investors,
as investor.
LPs. And if I'm sourcing a deal that happens to be of the right criteria for that buyer, then I also might be able to participate as a GP, but they're two separate companies. So disclosure is still very important, but to work for a company that honors the entrepreneurial spirit and that hustle, that's something that's unique because most big box firms
won't allow it.
And I get it, they're publicly traded, so they only care about shareholder value, right? They don't want you to really be working on deals as a principal. They want you to be out there selling more deals, earning more fees. And I get it. That's in their best interest for the company and the shareholders. That's why I personally, over time, I floated down from the big box firms into the smaller, more regional, more boutique shops because they were more aligned with what I wanted to pursue in my personal career path. And, I love a lot of the big box firms. I've either been courted by them, they've made me offers, and I've worked at a few myself too. My personal preference where I'm at right now in my business and in my career, I love the more nimble, smaller boutique regional firms because they just are more nimble and they are more entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree. I think definitely all brokers should think about it, how to transition eventually on the principal side. But there are so many of them after 4 years, they still on such a, big checks, but not able to accumulate any wealth, which I think it's kind of sad actually at the end of the career, some of them.
Well, let's not forget. I mean, most big brokerage firms are still operating under a lifelong junior senior mentor model.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who is 4 years into the business who may have sourced and personally procured 20 deals that ended up being paychecks, they still are only keeping 25 cents for every dollar
Mm-hmm.
at most for those fees. So it's really hard to be in a position to earn and build equity if for every $100 that you bring in, you're only keeping 25 before taxes.
Exactly.
And that's just unfortunately the model that many of the big firms are still set up to execute, which means at the top of the food chain, those brokers who have large teams who've been there for 10 plus years, they are aggregating fees and they have juniors who are crushing it. And in most cases, the seniors have not continued to do the things that got them there.
Yeah.
That's what attributes to a lot of that burn and churn, is that you have juniors who are now doing the work, who are feeding seniors fees. They're fat and happy. The juniors are sitting around thinking, man, I spent 2, 3, 4 years of my career. I've done all these good things. I'm still broke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a function of the system less so than their effort and their skill set.
That makes sense. Yeah, yeah. 100%. 100%. All right. So next thing I want to touch on, 200, you've trained hundreds of professionals through your career. If you could, pinpoint one or two traits, what separates from ones who do not make it and who make it in the top
Yeah,
5%.
sure.
What are those main one or two traits?
They have to almost be foolish. They have to be willing to be a fool. And what I mean
Okay.
by that is, it's almost like a childlike naivete, right? Like you have to just like not care what anyone thinks, and people might think you're crazy. Why would someone that owns a $10 million building trust a guy that's never sold a building with that assignment? Well, you have to kind of be crazy enough to believe that, I don't know, but I'm going to have a conversation and find out. So the folks that just don't let circumstances stop them before they even get to the table, that's a trait that I wouldn't trade for anything. I'd rather just be that courageous and that curious to be willing to make a fool of myself. And I do it every day. I made a fool of myself by leaving a national company that a lot of people knew and recognized and understood to join a unknown startup that had not closed an apartment deal. That was a foolish opportunity that could have, and it did, get me laughed at by a lot of people. That's okay. I'm okay with being, you know, misunderstood and in many cases wrong.
But how many deals you closed, guys, in the first 9 months?
It will be 25 today. We have a
There you go.
closing today.
Here
So
you go.
25 apartment deals today, right?
Yeah.
So you got to be willing to make mistakes. You got to be willing to take risks that sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. That's one trait. And then I think just really those who are always learning. I mean, I've trained people who have gone on, they're doing, 7-figure businesses annually. When I speak with them, they're focused on, what are you doing today? What's working well in your business? They're trading ideas. They're still curious. They're still learning, and they never have gotten to a point to where they have it all figured out. I have a lot of respect for a lot of the guys that we probably follow together on LinkedIn, Bob Knackle being one, Adam Dunn, who's a good friend of mine, being another. These are guys that every single day, they're still learning and they're still figuring it out, regardless of how many billions of dollars of real estate they've sold. There's something to be said about that, right? To be a lifelong learner and to never be so successful that you don't need someone else's help, or at least willing to listen to someone else's opinion, especially if that person might have expertise in an area that you don't. And for me, social media was one of those places. I am not a social media guru. I wanted to learn how to do it. I was willing to learn and listen. And it turned out by listening to those people that knew more about that niche than I did, it benefited my business. So that's a perfect example of merging, a willingness to look funny and to be ridiculed and to, miss the mark with a never unwavering desire to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the two things that I think are irreplaceable.
Yeah, for sure. I have a mantra for myself, which I developed for quite some time ago. I think the more I know, I understand that. The more I know, actually, the less I know. And if you think that you know everything, you lost the battle. But if you have a mindset that the more you know, actually less you know, and you have more desire to learn, just going to propel you more in life.
That's it. Absolutely.
For sure. We're almost at the top of an hour. I would like to go with a question, which we call a personal question. And if you have a passive, it gets too personal.
Okay.
But the question is, if you had a chance to talk to 25-year-old Matthew, what advice would you give it to him?
Wow, that's a good one. I would say get comfortable with not being understood a lot sooner. It's natural for people to hesitate and do things out of, concern about what others will think, about how will this make me look. The sooner that you step into your confidence and understand that, your path is your path. It may not look like someone else's path. I think I would have probably hit a different level of success a lot faster if I shed my desire to be liked and to be understood. And that's a very transparent and honest answer. And then I also would just say, constantly seek mentors who are already ahead or down the road in which you are embarking. Yeah. Don't figure out how to blaze your own trail. There's not a lot of things that haven't been done in humanity, right?
Exactly.
So absent of you, if you go back in time, wanting to be the first one to walk on the moon, absent of you, making some significant discovery, especially now with, AI and the tools that we have at our disposal, there's not much that one could want to learn, want to do, or want to understand that there's not someone or a place that already has that information readily available. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find someone that knows that path and do the right thing, which is find a way to get in that space, in that ecosystem with that person, and be humble enough to where if you're invited into that space, to be a listener and a learner, and to put your own pride and ego aside.
Yeah. Thank you, man. For sure. That resonates with me. On that note, I just came across to me one article that you probably saw that the AI companies, they run out of data to load the MLM models, right? So pretty much, the whole knowledge is out there and it's been done. So you're thinking that you're doing something innovative? Probably not. No, someone has done it. Just go learn from them.
Just go learn from them. Take notes and be grateful that, you saved 5-10 years of your life. You don't have to figure it out on your own.
Awesome. Yeah. So where people can find you, just where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, get on your training, talk to you?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me. So Matthew with 2 T's, Drane. And I'm sure you'll provide a link to my LinkedIn bio here in the show notes. That's the best place to find me. You can message me there. And then also www.revolt, REVOLTCRE.com, revoltcre.com. You can learn more about our community, and you can also, if you want to learn more about membership, find details there. So those are the two best places to find me.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, we'll drop that link in our YouTube description, guys. But reach out to Matt. Definitely. He's the only one so far I know who is teaching that skill for acquisition managers and brokers. So definitely worthwhile. And I really, really appreciate for this conversation. Hopefully we're going to do it again. And can't wait to see how far you're going to go with your company and to those folks who are catching the trend and going against the grain. So kudos to you guys and all the success.
Sure. Saul, thank you so much. It's been fun and looking forward to this episode.
Awesome.
You've been listening to the Value Builder Podcast. For more strategies, stories, and episodes, head to valuebuilder.co or subscribe on your favorite app. Always make it better than you found it and keep adding value. See you in the next one.